on the road, and we're visiting today with Elizabeth Watkins of 1207 Elm in Benton. Elizabeth, you're in Benton now, but I think you saw the light of day out around Olive, did you?
Yes, that's right.
And when was that?
September the 16th, 1919.
And your mother and father, your mother was...
Etta Fieldbeck.
She was a Fieldbeck, let's see. And your dad?
W.H. Watkins.
Now, how many children were there?
There were 8, but there was one little boy died that I never did see. He was just about 3 when he passed away. He was the 3rd child, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, there are a lot of Watkins families, of course, in the county, and I've known a good many of them. I believe I went to school with your sister Agnes.
Yes, it is.
And
Billy.
And you had a brother, Billy.
Uh-huh.
He and I were in a play together.
Yeah.
Did he ever tell you that?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because he was in lots of plays. He was right smart of a cut-up.
Yeah. Yeah, a good bit of fun. Well, since you were born in Olive, I guess maybe if you continued to live around there, you went to school there,
yes,
too.
I went to school at Olive and just went through the 8th grade as far as my education went.
Well, do you remember any of your teachers?
Yes, Miss Laura Green was my first teacher.
Uh-huh.
And then she married Heist Harrison.
Yes.
And then Miss Leola Hastings was my teacher. And Mayla Watkins, I guess she was Mayla Nanny by then, and Samuel Nanny, and David.
Oh, now wait a minute. Mayla, was she kin to you?
Yeah, she's a cousin. I know her. She'd be about a 3rd cousin, I guess, but we were raised just across the woods from each other.
Do you think you got any favorable treatment
No,
there?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Now, I remember that Mayla Watkins was a graduate of one of the Hardin High School classes.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that I've heard, I can't think now whether it was Boris Utley or which class it was, but somewhere along in there, I remember that. Maybe it was Helen Stone Gardner, I think. So, I believe she had a brother that went there.
Ed. Mm-hmm.
And he was in one of those classes also. Well, were you kin to Rayburn Watkins?
Yes, Rayburn's dad and my dad were cousins.
Well, you know, he and I were big buddies. Well, of course, I went to Hardin, he went to Benton, but when we got to Murray State, we just made a career together.
Mm-hmm.
Took about every class together and debated together and so on and so on. So he's been a friend of mine for a long time, and of course, I remember Gip. Now Gip's, see, Rayburn's mother died when he was fairly young.
Yes, and they lived with his grandparents, Uncle Sam, Kenny, and Aunt Lizzie.
Mm-hmm.
They lived here where Mel's Food Mart is now.
Oh, yeah.
Or when I knew them,
Uh-huh.
that's where they were living.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of Mel's, that's pretty handy to you.
Yes, it is.
Well, let's get back to school. Now, Gus Harrison taught over in there some.
Yeah, he taught there, but I never did go to school to him.
Uh-huh.
No, I don't. Well, I guess he was teaching. We called it the big room and the little room. I believe he was teaching the big room when I was in the little room when Mayla was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
But then later years where he taught again, and Agnes and Billy went to him, but I never did have any classes with him.
You just missed it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, what do you remember about grade school that you liked the most? Were you a math lover or a spelling lover?
Yes, I liked math, and I could do fractions pretty good then, but I never could learn to do what is that that you had to let X stand for the number.
Oh,
and all that.
the algebra
Yeah,
part?
algebra. I
Yeah.
never could learn algebra.
I never was a great lover of math, but in fact, I used to say I couldn't learn it. But then I found out in World War II that I could. I had to get in the naval officer group. I had to take algebra and trig. Well, I passed it right away because the threat was that if you didn't, you'd go to immediate sea duty as an apprentice seaman. So if you're properly inspired, sometimes you do things you don't think you can. But that was always, I wanted to be reciting poetry or something or other. Well, what about the games? Do you remember any games you played that you liked?
We played ante over. That was throwing the ball over. We'd have two sides, and you'd throw the ball over, and then whenever you'd catch it, we'd run around to the other side, you know. And I don't know where we're supposed to catch somebody, tag them or something. I don't know. It's been so long. But anyway, and then we'd play drop the handkerchief.
Yeah.
And then we'd play Ring Around the Rosie and Wolf Over the River.
Yeah, I remember that name, Wolf Over the River. Now, did you have to break through a line or something?
Yeah, we played out there, and we'd go across the road, you know, and they'd say, Wolf Over the River, and so we'd run, and they'd catch us, I believe, and if we got caught, did we have to go into a place and have to stay till...
It seemed like
we did. I think we had to get out of the game if we got tagged at least.
Yeah. Yeah, those were interesting and wonderful.
Of course,
times.
we didn't have anything, any kind of swings or anything like that to play with, you know.
There was playground equipment was practically non-existent at those little schools, and at least the ones I went to were all in Callaway County. Although I was born out there, not terribly far from Olive, actually. Barnett Cemetery, that's not too far from Olive, is it? And my dad had grown up there. But I always, when I started school, I went to school at Blakely, and then I went to Stone and graduated in Callaway County before moving back to Hardin again and starting to school with Agnes.
Well, see, now Joe Youngblood went to Blakely School. That was a cousin of mine.
Yeah.
And I guess Bill did. Because they lived out there on the Wadesboro Road.
That's right. They lived out in that area, and he went to Blakely. I'd forgotten about that, but they did. And I can recall kids that went to Hardin when I did. A lot of them lived in Dexter. They didn't pay attention to the county line, did they? Whether you was in Callaway or Marshall, he just went wherever you wanted to, I reckon. Didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. Well, when you got a little bigger, what kind of entertainment sort of things did we have back then? Did you ever go to a pie supper?
Yes, one time, and so I carried a pie, and let's see now, what was his name? Reese Harrison bought my pie, and he was one of the most noted of Olive, I guess, because he made a lawyer, you know.
Yeah.
But and when I had a box supper then later on after I was out of school, I think.
Now let's see, the box supper, you had what?
You put
more than
almost
a pie?
a full meal in there.
Whole meal.
And so they'd buy that, and or buy the
that
pie,
was
and
a
then
lot
you'd
of
eat,
fun.
whoever got it, you'd eat with them.
Yeah.
But I didn't go to the play parties and things like that. But I belonged to the 4-H, and then later on, we'd have activities, you know. And then,
Oh yeah. Well, now tell us about some of the things they did in 4-H back then.
They taught us to sew. We'd have a sewing project.
A sewing project.
And then we'd have a canning project.
Well, you must have learned to sew pretty well. I understand you're the greatest quilter in Marshall County.
Well, and then we'd have style shows, and
You'd make a dress?
Yeah, the first thing we did was, I think we made a pot holder and a tea towel.
Uh-huh.
And then we made an apron, and then we made a dress.
You started simple and
Uh-huh.
kept getting a little more complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Miss Loretta Markham was the home agent then.
Oh, there was an agent before Sunshine College then.
1937, I believe she said, when she came.
You know, people have asked me who was before Sunshine College, and I never could think.
Yeah, well, there was two before Sunshine College.
Yeah.
Miss Ann Garrigan.
Uh-huh.
But I was working at cigar factory then, and didn't get to go to the meetings then, but my mother did.
Because I guess I lived in Callaway, and it seemed to me like when we moved to Marshall that it was Sunshine anyway. And she was a good one for a long, long time, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Well, did they have any speaking contests and so forth back then? Did you?
When they had, now I forgot what they called the day, but anyway, you could put on a demonstration, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I never did do that.
You kept
But
more.
come over to Benton,
Uh-huh.
and they'd put on a demonstration, and they'd win prizes for, you know, the one that put on the best demonstration.
Have you ever done much research or any at all on your family's history?
Well, no, I didn't do it myself, but
you have some.
so when Ben Norwood and Emmy lived up there by us, why she passed away first, and so she didn't have a will, and so this property they had came by her parents, you know, and so whenever he died, why that had to be researched, you know, and to see who got the property, and it was sold at the courthouse door over here, and so Marvin Prince and his daddy and another man, I forgot who that lawyer was, somebody in Paducah. They had to go through all this and got up a whole list of names to see how much each person got, and so my mother, her mother was Emmy's cousin, and so Mamaw,
That got her into the act,
her Mamaw's children got what she was supposed to get, and so my mother shared in that, and so this man made a copy of that, and so one of the Redden girls got it. She was in the family, you know, and so she made me a copy of that, and so I have that I can tell people about.
The Reddens and the Norwoods, why,
Yeah,
first
well, see,
thing you know,
that was through the Goheens, though, how they were related.
well, you might have been kin to Ty.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
The baseball
Yeah.
pitcher. And
But anyway,
all that.
see, my grandmother, or no, it was my great-grandmother. She was a Utley, and she married a Goheen.
Uh-huh.
And there was two Goheen men that married Goheen sisters. And so they lived down there just before you got to the Goheen Bridge. It's like we used to come to Benton, you know, across the bottom there.
Uh-huh.
And that was on a whole lot of land that James Goheen and Elizabeth Utley Goheen. But I guess it was his dad is the one that I think they homesteaded this land, you know, and I don't think it cost but about 50 cents an acre, I believe it was, what they had to pay for that.
Wouldn't you like
and
to?
then it just took in a whole quarter section, I guess, as they called it, you know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so, and then my parents bought 10 acres of that land, and that's where they built their home, and they raised their family there. There was two little boys before they moved there, but then the rest of them was born there. And so Agnes and I lived there at that same place for over 60 years.
Well, and you finally sold it?
Yeah, we got a chance to move over here, and so we decided that we'd move while we were still both together.
Uh-huh.
And so we're glad we did, but we didn't know where we'd be satisfied, but we were. We hadn't been homesick at all, and we got into a good neighborhood.
You're
Yeah.
within a half a block of a grocery store and about 1 block of the courthouse.
And of the banks and everything.
Banks and the drugstore and well, really, you could walk to the hospital in about 3 blocks.
I have, and
guess.
I can walk to either the funeral homes or anywhere that I need to, and so I was left here during the day to see after myself, and so
Yep.
I can take care of my affairs now and don't have to wait for somebody to carry me places.
That's real interesting. My brother-in-law, Orrin Johnston, who married my wife's sister, has done a lot of family research. He just got carried away with that, and I know he's. I believe he told me his mother was a Watkins.
She was. Her
Married
daddy and my daddy is brothers.
Well, say we're right in the same family.
Yeah.
Well, somewhere or other, he went way back toward the Civil War and maybe beyond, and he'd even found somewhere where there was a Mofield in the wood pile. I don't know.
Yeah. And so Benny Keith Watkins is my nephew, and so he likes to keep up with the family history, you know, and so he found out there was a cemetery over there on the Wadesboro Road where our Watkins people was buried, my granddaddy and a bunch of his brothers, and so they didn't have any monuments. And so that just worried Benny that he wanted that marked.
He wanted something done about that.
So Benny and Charles Watkins, they got a form letter fixed, and we mailed them out, and so they people sent in contributions, and so they got a monument fixed and got it up there at Wadesboro. As far as I know, it hadn't been set yet, but they've got it ready to put up whenever the weather gets pretty, you know, so that they just won't lose out of where they were buried, you know.
Well, I believe Hetty Watkins
she helped to
Wagner
do
was
that.
saying something about that.
Yeah, she
And I believe she said Rayburn paid on
he
it.
did.
Yeah.
So that was our great granddaddy, and then it'd be Benny Keith's great granddaddy who was buried there, and about 6 of the sons.
Well, that's very good. I think it's nice to mark those things and remember them, give honor to those whose heritage that we enjoy so much today. Now, you said there were 8 of the children that lived, I believe, or
7 that lived.
7 that lived. Now, where are they scattered now?
Well, see, now Paul was my oldest brother, and he passed away in 1964.
Now, he was secretary of the Carpenters
Yes,
Union, wasn't he?
Yeah. And then Willard lives up here on Highway 80, and Pat lives at Murray. He works for Parker Ford. And then Kenzie lives on Highway 68, and Billy lives here on 408 in Benton, and Agnes and I live together.
So Billy's right here on 408, just on out the road a little ways. Well, I didn't really realize where he'd gotten away to.
Well, see, now he's moved around a whole lot. They moved their home from over at Olive here in Benton, and they sold that, and then they'd build him a home, and he'd get a chance to sell it and make a profit, I guess, and so he'd build him another one, and so he's had several places here, so he's going to soon be ready to retire.
Now, you've got a quilt frame over there, but I remember my mother quilting, and they had hooks in the ceiling. Of course, the ceilings were lots higher in the old houses we lived in back then, and they'd have those hung down on ropes or something, and they'd wind that up of a night and just put it up above.
They did that to get it out of the way.
Yeah. And of course, in her day, she died in 1953, but earlier than that, I don't remember exactly when. A lot of times neighbor women would just come in and I guess they swapped work, sort of.
We did that too. And have a good time.
And They'd fix dinner and laugh and tell stories, and it was kind of fun, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Made the work pass more rapidly. When you're working alone, though, you can set your own pace, can't you?
Uh-huh.
And you don't have to worry about that part of it. And I see you just have that on chairs
Mhm.
over there. Well, that's I'd never thought about it, but now I imagine those quilting frames could tell a story.
Yes, now they've been in the family a long time. My dad made them out of just some home sawed lumber that Mr. Cole had a sawmill. No, yeah, I believe he did. Anyway, he had, maybe he had some land down there that had this timber on it. But anyway, there was a sawmill down the bottom, and my dad worked down there, so he brought that to the house, and he smoothed that up, you know, and he put the holes in there.
About every 2 inches or so,
Uh-huh.
you've got a hole
Yeah,
drilled.
so you roll it, when you get your quilting done, while you roll that up so you can reach the next then.
And you run a nail through that
Uh-huh.
to hold it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And I had a chance to get the quilt on that biggest quilt in the world down here at the dam a while back.
You did?
Yeah, I got to quilt a little on that.
Well, that is on television and
Uh-huh.
all around.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah, and
I
so-
remember hearing a publicity about
It
it.
is 31 feet by 31 feet.
Well, how many worked on it?
Oh, there was over 200 here in Marshall County that
Uh-huh.
got to work on it, and then it was going to be carried. It had already been quilted on a whole lot before it was brought here, and then it was going to be carried to 4 or 5 more places before
Mhm.
it was finished.
Yeah. Well, that's quite an honor. Were you invited specially?
Yeah,
or-
Miss Kurtzinger, our home agent, she told me back several weeks before it came down here
Mhm.
that it was going to be down here in January, so she
Mhm.
found out that she was going to go down there, and so she invited me to go, and I didn't get to work very long, but enough to say that I got the quilt on it.
Yeah, well, great. Now, where is it that will finally be?
Well, there's a committee that's appointed that's going to decide
Decide
how it's
where
going to be cared for and where they're going to put it.
where it will go.
Mhm.
Well, wherever they put it, then you can always point up there and say, I quilted a little bit on that. Well, that's wonderful. What about traveling? Have you ever done?
No, I never. I was always a home girl. I never
Uh-huh.
did left to go home away from home at night. But I did get to go to Detroit one time and stay a week. And I've been to the state homemakers meeting
Uh-huh.
as a delegate from our club twice.
Yeah. Now you went to some kind of a club meeting today.
To the homemakers club.
Uh-huh. Well,
And
that's,
our lesson today was Kentucky heritage.
yes. Now that's something that I would like, of course, is the Kentucky heritage part of it. I can remember back in grade school, some of the greatest thrills I ever had was from that old cherry history book called Kentucky, the Pioneer State of the West. And I'd read about Daniel Boone and just imagine I was there with them. So that's good. You keep alive the history of the area, and you get some association there and so forth. Well, tell us about when you were growing up. Did your dad farm?
Yes, he was a sharecropper.
Yeah, well,
My
that's-
granddaddy, John West Fieldbeck, had land, and so he let his son-in-laws work there, and they'd give a third, I believe. But then whenever the war came on, why, Dad got a chance to go to work at Viola, down there.
The
at
shell loading plant. I remember.
And then after that, why, he went to Calvert City and worked some, and so he got to work him out some Social Security that way to
Mhm.
have a retirement.
Well, that's very good, very interesting. My dad was a sharecropper too. In fact, as I said, we moved around, lived in Callaway quite a bit finally we moved to Mr. Booker's farm in '38, and then we stayed there. And Mr. Booker got sick, and he'd meant to retire there, but when he saw he was going to die, why, we bought it. He told me, he said, "You ought to buy that for your dad." And I said, "Well, I couldn't buy anything, Mr. Booker." "Well, I know you could." He said, "You can have it for $500 a year and 6% interest." Said, "You know you can pay that." So then my parents were able to live most of their lives there. Well, my mother, of course, all of hers. Now, the entertainment wasn't very great in the early days. Do you remember whether you had a radio or not when you were small?
No, we didn't have one until in the 40s, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, 39 was our first radio.
Yeah, and it was battery operated. We didn't have electricity till I guess about 49. I believe we got the electricity about then.
47 was when it came by our farm.
Well, it was at Olive, but it didn't come out the little side road till about 49.
So when I got to listen to a radio then, oh boy, I thought that was something.
Yeah, and so some of our neighbors had radio before we did, and so they'd want us to come, and so we'd go almost every evening to hear Amos and Andy and Lum and Abner.
Oh, I thought that was the biggest thrill. They'd say, we take you now to the Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and the Jot 'em Down store. And here would come Lum and Abner. Oh, that's... And
we'd entertain ourselves at home. We'd play blindfold, you know, and then we'd make us some cards to play with. We'd cut up the calendar pages, you know, and we'd cut 4 of 1, 2, 3, 4, and I don't know how many. And so we'd have books, we called them, you know. When you got 4 of these, while you'd lay them over to the side, you had a book of 4s or a book of whatever. What we'd do, we'd have 3 or 4 of us playing, you know, and we'd say, "We want all you 3s," or "We want all you 4s." And then the one that had the most books when it was over, well, they was the winner.
Yeah.
And we'd go to the neighbor's house, you know, and just sit till bedtime and talk. As that saying is, that's the good old days.
Yeah.
We didn't know any better, and we was happy.
That's right.
Yeah.
I can remember you just go sit till bedtime, and that was fun. And sometimes they would maybe popcorn and
make popcorn balls sometimes.
Yeah, we used to go to Van Ratliff's, a fellow that I knew, and his wife Hattie, and they had no children, and so they're crazy about children, so they'd always do about whatever I wanted done and spoil me to death. But Hattie would make popcorn balls or something. They'd have, everybody grew a little bit of everything. We'd have peanuts to shell, and I still like those old peanuts that are in the shell and haven't been roasted. I guess you can buy sacks of those things now. You don't see them as often as you used to. And popping corn. I can remember Van had a popper that was made out of screen wire.
Held it over the open fire.
Yeah. Now we had a popper, but it was solid, kind of a bluish metal like a stovepipe. And I couldn't imagine how Van's popper would work, and it just made out of screen wire. But it did. Well, you know, we're rapidly getting toward the end of the program. Do you remember any funny things that have happened to you in your life, or any your most embarrassing moment or anything? Did you come to Big Singing Day and forget your hat, or?
I didn't get to come to Big Singing Day till after it got grown. But I remember one thing that Agnes and I was left with our grandmother one evening, and so we was playing out there, and she got some dirt on her dress, and so I was going to wash it off, and so that would made it mud, you know. And so she told me not to do it, and I went ahead and done it anyway. And so she gave me a little spanking. And so I went to bed and went to sleep, I think, then. And so I guess that's the only time she got after me about it. But I know one time we was a little kid, and we was up at Aunt Vern Walker's, and they had the little chickens out there at the sheep house, and we went out there, and so they was a drinking, you know, and that was strange to me. You've seen little chicken drink. They'd put their bill in the water, and then they'd hold their head up, you know, to swallow that.
That's right.
And I said, Aunt Vern, what makes little chickens hold their head up when they drink?
Well, that's a lot of fun. Thank
Well-
you so much. I appreciate your letting me come by and do an interview for the oral history. We've been visiting at 1207 Elm Street here in Benton, Kentucky, the home of Elizabeth Watkins. And this is Ray Mofield returning you now to our studio.